Julie from Solas Inspirational Chats once again.
Yeah, Dave Belair, and what a delight to have Seán O'Laoire with us for our Solas Special for the solstice. So, Michael, would you like to introduce Seán and explain how we're so delighted to get a chance to connect with you? And thank you. We're aware with the 8-hour time difference, it's wonderful to get this opportunity to have Cúpla Focal with you.
Seán is, I suppose his website is Spirits and Spacesuits. And we put all the details underneath this Zoom so that people can get in touch with Seán if they wish. And we came across Seán a few years ago through his niece, who was a friend of ours and unfortunately transitioned. And recently Seán was on the Gaia channel with Regina Meredith. Regina Meredith?
Yes, Meredith, yeah, and Paul
Wallace. And we just thought we'd reach out to him and make an approach and see if he'd be willing to come and talk to us, So the long-haired louts are in town today, so lovely to meet with you.
You're really modern. So, Seán, after that shocking introduction, would you like to explain to our viewers a little bit about yourself? And obviously, he's a Cork man, so we appreciate he's from the other capital.
Well, you know why they didn't take the Nelson's pillow down until a few years ago?
Yeah, 1966. Yeah.
If they didn't take Nelson, if they took Nelson down, a Corkman would stand up in it.
Fair enough.
Brilliant. And so obviously I'm born and raised in County Cork, raised bilingually in Gaelic and in English. And I had a great grandmother who was kind of a Christian mystic and a grandfather who was kind of a druid. And so I got the kind of the cross-fertilization of kind of a deep mystical Christianity, and at the same time I was filled with the kind of the folklore and the mythology of Ireland. And I had a tremendous interest, particularly in proverbs, as we call them seanchaí, as you know, which means ancient words. And so the summer holidays between before I did my leaving cert, between 5th year and 6th year in secondary school, I spent the entire summer in a little village called Éire in West Cork, collecting proverbs. And I would go around to the elders and ask them, give me a proverb and tell me the context in which you would use it. And I found I collected 432 proverbs. And what I discovered was that proverbs are the kind of the distillation of the wisdom of a culture. If you really want to know any culture, go to their proverbs. And one old man said to me in particular, he said, if Christianity had never come to Ireland, we could live according to our proverbs. And he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And as a missionary in Kenya, I had the privilege of learning 4 different African languages and their mythology. And I would say the same thing to them. If Christianity had never come to Africa, you could live according to your proverbs, because the proverbs are the distillation of the wisdom of a culture. But one of the things I found out was that proverbs always seem to contradict each other, because truth is so multifaceted that there's a situation in which A is true and a situation in which not A is true. So for instance, in English we'll say, look before you leap, but he who hesitates is lost. And in Gaelic we'll say, there's no fireside like your own fireside. But we also say, there's a special taste on the neighbour's food. When you're a child, you always think the grub in the neighbour's house tastes better than the stuff you're getting at home. And in Swahili we say, haraka, haraka, hina baraka. Hurry, hurry has no blessing. But we also say, chilewa, chilewa, mtoto siwako. Delay, delay, and the baby will not be yours. If you're in love with a woman in Africa and you don't marry her, she's not going to just hang around. She'll find somebody else, and the baby will not be your baby. And so I see that again, that the wisdom of a culture is contained in their proverbs. So when you go to the proverbs, you're dealing with the paradox of reality. So that became really, really important to me. Then I had my father, Paddy O'Laoire, he was an archaeologist. And he told me way, way back that Newgrange is older than the pyramids. So that was an eye-opener to me. And I began to think about it. When you think about Newgrange, and the passage tombs, that at a specific sunrise on a specific day, that a shaft of light goes into the darkest recesses of an underground cavern and lights it up. And for me, that's the splink of consciousness, or Christ consciousness, if you want, penetrating the density of our three-dimensional experience and lighting us up from the inside out. Because it's recognizing and identifying the soul self, the part of ourselves that's been clouded, which is why I call it a spirit in a spacesuit. The spacesuit is just a kind of a piece of equipment that we need in order to live in a three-dimensional reality. But the Celts understood that, that the light penetrates to the very, very, very core. And light, we know from quantum mechanics that all matter is frozen light. So if planet Earth is our mother, it's matter, literally, that all matter is frozen light. And then, Logos, or Christ consciousness, is the kind of the morphological agent that gives shape to matter. So it's like a potter with a bunch of clay. So the clay is actually light, in quantum mechanical theory, and then you need an intelligence to create some kind of a shape from it, a cup or a bowl or a candlestick or whatever. And that's the dance then between light, and earth. So Mother Earth then, in some senses, is the matter out of which we are composed, and the sunlight from the Father is what activates it. So there's this extraordinary dance in the Celtic system between light and darkness, between sun and Mother Earth. So that's what I celebrate when I think about the summer solstice. It's the fertilization of the mother by the energy of the Father, the light penetrating the matter.
Yeah, it's a wonderful way to describe it. And yeah, I'd be totally on board with what you're saying, because I would believe that, the Celts, and I would have had a huge interest in the Tuatha down in the Fomorians, the Firbolg. And I love the story you told on Gaia. And we'll put a link to that down below as well.
And the songs you sang in Irish too. We were so impressed. We were like, we know this man, we must get in touch.
Yeah. Yeah, we feel that, it's important to, I know a lot of the Celtic festivals have been hijacked by the commercial world. You look at Samhain and Halloween, you look at, in around the solstice and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily the people of the light who are hijacking it. And then you look at the different festivals we would have had around, say, the winter solstice, they hijacked it for the birth of Christ, and there's a whole question mark over the date of birth, but we won't get into that here. So we would believe that we celebrate all the Celtic festivals here.
Yes, we do.
Brilliant.
Yes, and we're going to Tara for the summer solstice.
Beautiful.
I mentioned that to you. I would have trained as a Celtic priestess too, because Michael and I would share a profound love for our island. And we often wondered why we incarnated here. But then as we look around at all the beauty and then the stories, as Michael said, of the Celtic legends and the She, we feel privileged to live on this island, which people often say is at the heart chakra of Gaia. And also we had the opportunity to go to Avalon there a few weeks ago, and we got to touch base with people in Glastonbury and people at Avebury. So at 12:30 on the actual solstice, there's going to be a triangle of energy that we're creating from Tara across to Avalon and to Avebury, just to call in, I'm getting goosebumps now, the energies of the Christ consciousness and the divine feminine. So I'd say we'll get a good blast of energy, and we'll send a bit over to you too, Seán.
Good stuff, love. Brilliant. That's awesome. I love that. And so, you know very well then. Have you come across the work of Philip Carr-Gomm at all? Do you know Philip Carr-Gomm?
No.
He's
No.
a kind of a druid, a modern druid in England. He's been at this for about 40, 50 years. So he and I have done a few dialogues together, mediated by a friend of mine from Australia. And so he has really good grip on the kind of the druidical aspect of spirituality. So he and I have kind of dialogued together on the cross-fertilization of kind of the Christian and the druidical kind of worship. So, there's a story, in fact, that the young Jesus as a boy traveled a lot with his uncle, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a tinsmith and traveled the world, locating tin mines. And there's a big tin mine in Cornwall, which is Celtic-speaking England, and that the child went with him there, and that he got exposed to the Druids, and that he may have incorporated some of this druidical wisdom in his own teaching. So for me, he's a cross-fertilization of many, many different traditions, because I think that, every language has a partial truth, and every spirituality has a partial truth. And it's by coming together and sharing our truths together that we create the entire fabric. It's like each of us has parts of the jigsaw puzzle, but none of us has the totality. And it's only by unifying our knowledge and putting all the pieces on the table together that we can see the final product emerge. So what you guys are doing, is really important work here.
Yeah, and do you know that Joseph of Arimathea came to Éire, There's a church dedication to him in Wicklow, which is in a ruin, and we were told about it.
Oh,
And the story is that Jesus was with him, or Yeshua was with him when he came here. The church was dedicated to him, but it was obviously destroyed later on. But
right.
we were told about it, and we were very lucky. We actually found it
Wow.
in Wicklow, and it's buried behind in hedgerow and all the rest. But the energy there is absolutely incredible.
Yes, yes.
And then, sorry, I was going to say about when we were in Glastonbury there 2 weeks ago. We went. There's a hill called Weary Hill, where Joseph of Arimathea is supposed to have put his staff into the ground, and this bush, a thorn bush,
Grew
um,
up from it.
grew from it. And it's unusual in that it flowers twice a year.
Wow.
Flowers at Christmas, and one of the things they do, which is I found it a little bit strange, is they give some of the blooms or some of the blossoms from it on Christmas Day to the royals in the UK.
Okay.
They used to go to the
Okay.
Queen, now they're going to
Okay.
the third, or Charles the Third,
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
They could badly do it, let me tell you.
Anyway, as you said earlier, Sean, there's so much incredible truth, and then there's legend, and it all merges together. But whatever resonates with you, that's what we say to people, because we would, as you say, have a strong belief that Yeshua did go with Joseph of Arimathea
Right.
to Avalon, yes, to Cornwall, and then we were told about this church, and we did a little podcast too. We say the Ho'oponopono prayer on a regular basis because
Wow, from Hawaii. That's beautiful.
yes,
Yeah.
for us it signifies unity consciousness. So we'll be saying that now for the solstice in Tara, because we really feel Gaia is moving up into the fifth dimension,
Yes.
especially when we get a chance to connect with so many amazing people around the world.
Right, brilliant. So I've had many, many powerful visions of Gaia herself. So years and years and years ago, I had this vision where souls were presenting themselves to guide and volunteering for particular kinds of missions. And this great soul, Mahatma, whom we call Gaia, volunteered and said to God, send me to that third rock from the sun in that solar system, and I will breathe life until I throw up a life form capable of recognizing its own divinity, and ipso facto, the divinity of all other species with which I share the planet. And she set up her task, 3.7 billion years ago. And possibly with the arrival of Homo sapiens sapiens, we're on the verge, a species who recognizes its own divinity, and ipso facto, the divinity of all other life forms. And that's the great insight of Hinduism, the Namaste. The divine in me recognizes and honors the divine in you. And I think we're on the brink of that if we don't destroy ourselves, of recognizing the divine and realizing that everything that exists is a word of God made flesh. There is nothing which is not God. Basically, I say to my own group that life is simply a dream that the ego is having, and the ego is a dream that the soul is having, and the soul is a dream that spirit is having, and spirit is a dream that God is having. So we're literally God's dream. And the question is then, can we raise our vibration so that we're not stuck in the lowest level of the dream? Because physical articulation is the lowest, most dense part of the dream, and we think it's the only reality. But we have to raise our consciousness to consciously and deliberately and sequentially disidentify with lower levels of self-identification and identify with higher and higher, until finally we realize that there is nothing except God and there is nothing except love. And as we make this progress as individuals, Gaia is doing the very same thing. I have this theory that Gaia herself has 7 different levels of body. There's the physiosphere, the rock, the third rock from the sun. Then there's the first thing she did was to kind of create a womb for herself. So she developed an atmosphere. That's the second sheath. Then the third one is the biosphere, flora and fauna. That's the third level of Gaia. Then the fourth level is what Tyler de Chardin called the noosphere, the sheath of consciousness that surrounds the biosphere. And we're in transition from the biosphere to the noosphere, which is really, really dangerous, because now we have the technology to literally destroy the physiosphere itself. But there are places beyond that. We're currently moving into noosphere. But after that is the animasphere, the soul of the planet. And then what I call the pneumosphere, the spirit of the planet. And then finally God herself. And so it seems to me that Gaia is keeping pace with us. As we disidentify with lesser versions of ourselves, instead of identifying with my physical body or with my emotions or with my profession or with my relationships, to identify more and more and more with my soul self, until finally I realize, I am simply a holographic fractal of source. And I think that the planet is pacing us in that process, so that there will always be a home for the souls who are identifying at higher and higher levels. And so movements such as like you're doing now, raising the consciousness in sacred spaces, is an invitation both to Gaia and to the individuals to continue raising their state of consciousness, so they're dancing together as partners in the same frequency.
Yeah, beautifully put. Yeah, I
My
have to say.
goodness, yes,
Yeah,
that's poetical. Thank you so much, Seán.
yeah.
Gosh, we can't really follow that, but what we want to invite you, would you like to tell the viewers perhaps about your website and the books that you've written and how people can get in touch with you? Because we could probably listen to you all night. Now, we know you have a busy schedule, but I'm sure people will want to reach out to you after this because it's just so fascinating listening to you.
Thanks a million, Pat. And so my email address is prayforsean@gmail.com, pray4sean@gmail.com, and my website is spiritsandspacesuits.com. And at this stage, I've written 6 books. The first one I wrote in Swahili when I was living in Kenya. I called it Ukweli ni Nini, which means what does truth mean? And then I wrote a book called Spirits and Spacesuits. And then the third one was called Souls on Safari. And the fourth one was called Why, what your life is telling you about who you are and why you're here. And then 3 years ago, I wrote one called Setting God Free, moving beyond the caricature we've created in our own image. So in that book, I actually put God on trial for crimes against humanity. And I held a whole court case with the prosecution and the defense, with mythologists and psychologists and archaeologists and Bible scholars on both sides of it. And coming to the conclusion, that the God we've worshipped, is a caricature we've created ourselves. That we who have been created in the image and likeness of a loving divinity have recast a kind of a genocidal divinity who is, lashing out blindly and wiping out all of creation in a fit of pique. And so that's the one I probably most recommend right now. It's called, Setting God Free, moving beyond the caricature we've created in our own image.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'll put all the details in the description below, as Michael said. And we just want to say, Gurmila Malka, thank you so much for joining us for our Solstice special. It's just been enlightening listening to you. And I'm sure we'll be chatting and connecting with you again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Mil Margaret.
The Falcher Road.